The golden afternoon sun filtered through the arched windows of Château de l'Aube, casting a warm glow over the sprawling dining hall in the Loire Valley. It was June 10th, 2025, and the air buzzed with the scent of lavender and the faint sweetness of freshly cut roses, meticulously arranged by the estate's gardeners for my cousin Sophie's 30th birthday celebration. I, Lena Moreau, stood near the entrance, my hands clutching a wicker basket filled with an assortment of pastries, flaky croissants, delicate eclairs, and a towering millefeuille I'd spent the previous night perfecting. At 36, I was the owner of Patisserie Lumière, a small but thriving bakery in Paris, a labor of love built from years of sweat and sacrifice. Yet, to the Moreau family, I remained the awkward girl who once burned a batch of brioche as a teenager, the one they'd never deemed worthy of their spotlight. The hall was a vision of opulence. Crystal chandeliers refracted light across silk-draped tables, and a string quartet played a soft waltz in the corner. Sophie, radiant in a custom-made gown by a Parisian designer, held court at the head table, her laughter ringing out as she toasted with a glass of champagne. My aunt, Madame Claire, presided with regal poise, her silver hair swept into an elegant chignon, her sharp gaze missing nothing. My brother, Julian, a high-profile lawyer with a penchant for tailored suits, was entertaining the guests with a story about his latest courtroom victory, his wife, Elodie, beside him in a dress that screamed couture. I approached the head table, my heart a mix of hope and trepidation, and set the basket down gently. "I brought some desserts," I said, my voice soft but steady. Aunt Claire's lips curled into a thin smile. "Oh, Lena, how quaint. But we've commissioned Pierre's patisserie for tonight. Far superior, don't you think?" A ripple of polite laughter followed, led by Julian, who leaned back in his chair and quipped, "Maybe stick to mending curtains, sis. Baking's not your calling." Sophie giggled, her eyes flickering to the basket before dismissing it entirely. The pastries sat there, untouched, a silent testament to my exclusion. I'd grown accustomed to this treatment over the years. As a child, I was the clumsy one, while Julian won debate trophies and Sophie dazzled with her ballet recitals. When Dad suffered a stroke 15 years ago, leaving his modest bakery on the brink of collapse, I dropped out of culinary school to save it. I worked dawn to midnight, mastering recipes, negotiating with suppliers, and paying off debts with every cent I earned. I turned it into Patisserie Lumière, a name that now graced local magazines and drew a loyal clientele. But my family never asked about it. Last Christmas, when I invited them to the bakery's grand opening, Sophie texted back, "Just immediate family tonight, sorry." I'd funded Julian's law school applications, sewn Sophie's wedding veil when she panicked about the fit, and stayed silent when they forgot to thank me. Yet, here I was, still the outsider they tolerated. The sting of their rejection deepened as I retreated to a corner table with a glass of water. The hall's chatter faded into a dull roar as I overheard Aunt Claire whispering to a guest, "Lena's a dear, but she'll never rise above her station. A baker's life suits her, humble, unpolished." Julian's voice joined in, low but clear. "She tries so hard, it's almost pitiful." Sophie added a soft laugh. "She's better off in the kitchen than out here." The words sliced through me, shattering the last vestige of my patience. I didn't cry. I'd learned long ago that tears were a luxury I couldn't afford. Instead, I slipped out, my mind already plotting. I didn't confront them that night. Instead, I returned to my hotel room and reviewed the documents I'd been hiding for months. Château de l'Aube was owned by a consortium I'd been investing in through my bakery profits, a venture I'd kept secret even from my husband, Daniel, a kind but detached history professor. Last fall, I'd secured a controlling stake, using a shell company, Patisserie Ventures, to finalize the deal. I planned to reveal it, strategically, and Sophie's birthday was the perfect stage. The chateau wasn't just a property, it was their symbol of status, the place they flaunted every summer. Owning it felt like reclaiming a piece of myself they'd trampled on. The next morning, I met with Elise, the chateau's manager, in a quiet office overlooking the vineyards. "Announce the new ownership at the afternoon tea," I instructed. "I want them to feel it without me there to cushion the blow." I spent the day in the chateau's kitchen, crafting a new batch of macarons, pistachio, raspberry, and chocolate, my hands moving with a precision born of years of practice. Each bite would be a reminder of the skill they'd mocked. At 3 p.m., I watched from a balcony as Elise tapped her glass, the room falling silent. "We're delighted to announce that Patisserie Ventures has acquired Château de l'Aube," she said, her voice carrying over the crowd. The silence was deafening. Sophie's champagne flute slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. Julian's face drained of color, his fork frozen midair. Aunt Claire's hand clutched her pearls, her mouth opening but no sound emerging. I stepped inside, my heels clicking with purpose, the basket of macarons in hand. "Surprised?" I said, my voice steady as I set the basket on the head table. "I've been funding this place while you laughed at my baking." The room froze, a tableau of shock and disbelief. Julian stammered, "Lena, you own this?" Sophie's eyes widened, her earlier confidence replaced by a stunned silence. Aunt Claire recovered first, her tone icy. "This is a mistake. You can't." "I can," I interrupted, meeting her gaze. "And I have. No more free stays, no more Moreau privileges. You're guests now, like everyone else." I turned to leave, pausing to add, "Try the macarons. They're better than Pierre's." The crowd watched, speechless, as I walked out, their stunned faces etched in my memory. The fallout began that evening. My phone buzzed incessantly with texts. "Julian, we need to discuss this, Lena." "Sophie, this is childish. Call me." Aunt Claire left a voicemail, her voice trembling with indignation. "This is unbecoming of family. Fix it." I didn't reply. The next morning, Daniel knocked on my hotel room door, his face a mix of confusion and guilt. "Mara," he began, "are you okay? I didn't know." "You never asked," I cut in. "Not about the bakery, not about my investments, not about me." He looked down, shame flickering in his eyes. "I should have," he said softly. "I thought you were just busy." I nodded. "You should have, but I don't need you to see me anymore. I see myself." He left, his shoulders slumped, and we haven't spoken since. The hurt was there, but it was overshadowed by a quiet strength I'd finally claimed. Over the next week, I stayed at the chateau, overseeing its operations. I introduced new policies, no legacy discounts, mandatory staff training on respect, a subtle jab at Aunt Claire's past behavior, and a community garden funded by the chateau's profits. The Ellisons tried to adapt, booking rooms at full price, their complaints muffled by the reality of my ownership. But I wasn't done. At the chateau's summer gala a month later, I hosted an event to launch a new initiative, the Moreau Culinary Academy, a training program for young bakers from underprivileged backgrounds, named after my father. The family attended, their designer outfits a stark contrast to the nervous tension in their eyes. I waited until their toast, then stepped forward. "Good evening," I said into the mic. "Some of you know me, or thought you did." Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. I flipped to a slide on the screen, a rendering of the Academy's kitchen, complete with ovens and workstations. "This is funded by the Moreau Culinary Fund," I said, glancing at Aunt Claire. She straightened, likely assuming it honored her lineage. I continued, "Named for my father, Henri Moreau, who taught me that skill outlasts status and who built this legacy with his hands." Aunt Claire's smile faltered, her hand tightening on her glass. Then the final twist. We're also reviewing all private leases, I added casually. Any misuse will be addressed. The room tensed. Julian had been subletting a chateau cottage for profit, earning thousands, unreported. Celeste's parents had a lease they'd abused for decades. Now I controlled every renewal. Julian tried to approach me as I left the stage. Lena, wait, can we talk? Book an appointment through guest services, I said, walking past. 2 weeks later, I sat on the chateau's terrace at dawn, a coffee in hand, the vineyards stretching before me. The estate felt alive. Staff greeted me with respect, guests admired the new gardens, and my academy's first class was set to start next month. My inbox buzzed with fallout. Julian's lease was under review, Celeste's parents faced a tax inquiry, and Aunt Claire sent a letter begging for family harmony. I didn't respond. I wasn't angry. I was precise. Daniel called once, his voice soft. I'm sorry, Lena. I should have seen you. I listened, but I didn't forgive. Not yet. You can start by asking, and hung up. We're not reconciled, but there's a chance now, a small one. The baker they mocked now owns their castle, and every bite of my pastries is a reminder of the power I've built. Revenge isn't loud. It's the quiet triumph of proving your worth when they least expect it. If you've ever turned the tables on those who underestimated you, share your story below. And if this resonated, hit subscribe. I've got more to tell.